Okay, we're going to get started right now with the next mini keynote. And the speaker is someone who needs no introduction, especially in Silicon Valley. He is Bipul Sinha, who's a co-founder and CEO of Rubrik, which has built the world's first cloud data management platform for hybrid cloud enterprises, and is now considered a unicorn startup in Silicon Valley speak. Bipul is also a venture partner at Lightspeed Ventures, and his current board memberships include Nutanix, Numerify, and Peel. His past investments include Pulse, bought over by LinkedIn, Pernix Data, bought over by Nutanix, and LiveProfile, bought over by RIM. Bipul received his BTech from IIT Kharagpur, and he holds an MBA from the Wharton School. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome my fellow IIT KGP alumni and a very good friend, Bipul Sinha.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's mixed emotions to be here, to be speaking. For me, to be here and talking to all of you, supposedly the people who passed the most difficult exam in the world, and so many talent and brain in this room. So I hope I can talk about something that might add value to your afternoon experience today. Also in the crowd is John Thompson, my mentor, my guide, our first investor in Rubrik, who gave us confidence to start Rubrik. So John, thank you, and great to see you. And also in the crowd is my dad. He wanted to come and see how I speak. So I have to do a good job. This is the real test. So when I first started talking to Meenakshi about a keynote, albeit it's a mini keynote, so I'll have a mini speech, I was thinking about what would be a good topic for this crowd. Given that there are so many aspiring entrepreneurs and already like people who are building company in this room, I thought about talking about how to build a fast startup. There have been many talks about how to build a startup, but I thought we should talk about how to take risk or more risk to reduce risk. So that is the topic for the day. So, and a lot of this is my learning as a venture capitalist at Lightspeed, as well as my experience working on Rubrik. So how to build a startup? So first of all, startups are all about a unique perspective. Peter Thiel calls it your secret. In simple words, what unique perspective means is you have a fundamental belief in a product and market that very few people agree to. Because if everyone agrees to your idea, then this idea doesn't have value, because there is very little risk in that idea. So first of all, the step one of a startup is to really have a unique perspective, a thought process where 80% of people say that, hey, you're going to fail. And then you start the company and prove 80% of people wrong. So for example, in Rubrik, people said that backup and recovery is done. Things are happening in the cloud, who needs backup? And every time I heard that, I felt that I must be onto something. But when you hear that the people don't agree with your idea, you have to go and validate the idea. You can't be just thinking you're right. So So the fundamental question is, for a startup, when you have an idea that few people agree with, is there a market for that idea? A way to think about a startup is, you are making dog food. Dog doesn't tell you what food dog would like. So you are, in some ways, making dog food in complete darkness. You can make dog smell the half-prepared food. You can go and show the dog all the ingredients. But dog doesn't tell you that they will like the final product. So how do you figure out that dog is going to eat the dog food? And that is the singular most challenging problem that you have in a startup. How do you find whether there is a market for your product? The way to answer that question, and that is the first biggest risk that you have as a startup. How do you figure out that there is a market for your product? A lot of time, we engineers like to imagine that we'll build and they will come. And as a venture capitalist, I learned this lesson the hard way. When a lot of your startups fail, you go back and think, what went wrong? So in Rubrik, what we did was, before the product was 1 year out, we actually hired an inside sales caller to get us meeting with our prospective customer. Product was not there. Product was not even 20% built, but we started to sell. We would tell customers that this is the value proposition. If this product were ready today, would you buy? So what we did was, we took risk of spending money in marketing before the product was even close to being ready. So cold calling into customers, particularly calling into customers who are not early adopters, not in Silicon Valley, not in New York City, but really going after folks in areas where people are not exposed to new technology as fast as coastal areas, helped us think through how to position, how to talk about our product, what are the features that our customers might like. And we would have a marketing person hear the customer feedback and questions to really understand, are we onto something? Because sometimes as an entrepreneur, you want to hear what you want to hear. You don't want to hear questions around whether there is a usefulness of the product or the idea. So picking up the phone and calling your customer is the best way to figure out whether the dog will eat the dog food. And then, what you have to understand is the following. The biggest problem for any startup is indifference. And when you pitch your idea and customer says that, it's a good idea, but they don't say they will love it or hate it. If you have indifference, that's the killer for your startup. So what you have to have is your unique idea stated in a very black and white manner so that you have clear yes or no answer from your customer. If they say they love it, you know that there is some signal here. Not a huge signal, some signal, because they have not yet given you a check. If they say they hate it, there is a huge amount of signal in that hate it. Because then you can go and ask all the questions around why they hate it, what would make the product, what would make them love the product, what modifications they need. So your goal as a new startup to identify the product market fit faster is to get the love it or hate it answer, not indifference. And it is very hard as an entrepreneur for us to hear hate it, because all your life, all your being is into thinking through this problem, this product that you want to build and sell. So once you collect all the feedback, while you are building the product, you need to take the feedback and build into the product. You don't want to build the product and then get the feedback. So while you are building the product, you want to talk to customers, get their feedback, and incorporate into the product. In my mind, most of the startup, when they build the version 1 of the product, they are probably 60% of the target where the product would be accepted by the market. And then they meander the next year and a half trying to get closer to 85% when they can start to sell the product. What we did in Rubrik was, since we started cold calling customers 1 year in advance, our learning from the customers was incorporated in the product, and then we got into the zone, call it 80-85% zone, as we were taking the product into beta. As a result, we sold $322,000 worth of product before the product even got into GA. And that gave us confidence that there is a market here and we can accelerate the business. So as you are figuring out that there is a product market fit and you have iterated enough on the product with the feedback, you are really first time entering into the arena. So far, you are building technology, not building business. But once you interact with the customer and once the customer starts to write you a check, then you are really entering the arena where you will have competition, you will have market interaction. You are now taking steps towards building a real business. But entering the arena without preparation is very challenging. And the typical mentality in Silicon Valley is go slow. Now think about it. The capital that you raise from venture firms is the highest risk capital that anyone in the world would give you. Because out of $100 that you put in the savings accounts, $5 goes into private equity asset class and maybe 2% goes into VC. And then you take that capital and you become conservative. You have been given that capital to accelerate the business. That's the risk capital. So as you prepare to go into the arena, what is your job number 1, 2, 3? Is to juice the funnel. Go into the arena with the highest armor that you can bear because you are ready for the battle. And if you don't have the ingredient, which is leads, customer contacts, salespeople, and market presence, again, you will take 2 years to figure out, do you have enough of the business ingredient to go build a business? So what we did was, 1 year in advance, we actually bought $250,000 worth of sponsorship for VMworld. And it was a crazy idea. Product was not ready or was under construction, and we were buying gold sponsorship for VMworld. But what that did to us was not only align the team to that timeline that we were pushing for, but also created heightened state of awareness for the sales team to go deliver because they will have so many leads. We drove 3,000 people on our booth, and it really started the engine for Rubrik. And that's where an interesting thing happens. When you have 5 or 6 sales team, and if you can feed them leads, what you are looking for is how fast are these people becoming productive? Is there an inflection in the business where it takes certain amount of time at which they become productive? And how do you figure out how much should they sell? How do you figure out what should be the sales cycle? How long does it take to sell to customers? And that's a big problem, and I would posit that a lot of startups go through few years or multiple years of the journey without knowing what is the efficient frontier. How fast can you sell, and how much can you sell in a quarter? So we took the idea again back into the consideration of risk capital. So what we did was we created a flat quota for our sales team for the next 12 months. And we said that, or very low quota, and we said that every dollar that you sell above that number, your commission will double. And your target is not the quota, but your target is super high number that we want you to achieve. And we put literally $4 or $5 million at risk to really figure out what is the efficient frontier. And when sales team hear low quota, huge territory, new product, and double money, they don't sleep. They almost kill themselves to make as much money in a quarter as they did in their previous job in the whole year. And that's what happened with us. Average salesperson made more money in a quarter than in a year in their previous job. And we figured out that about 100 days is our sales cycle. And they can sell $1 million a quarter. We set their quota at 300. And these two things have pretty much not changed since the second quarter of the company. So again, taking risk of putting more money into already a risky thing, which is a startup, to really reduce risk, because once you know the sales cycle and productivity, you can double down and go. And that's the point in your business where you want to go and raise really scale capital from the marketplace at a pretty low cost, because you have proven and reduced risk, and then you can press the gas and go and build a big business. So that's a little bit about Rubrik. Thank you so much for your time. I have roughly 7-8 minutes for questions, if you have any.
So Bipul, you were, a fairly successful venture capitalist before you took the plunge to start a company. How was the thought process there? It seems like a very hard decision, given you're coming from a very you're doing something you liked, and how did you make a decision on that?
So the way I think about risk as an external capital, I also think about risk with a human capital. All of us has one unit of human capital to invest. And I was thinking that what would be the best investment I can make of myself, and where would be the biggest impact I can create. And one thing that I was thinking about was that if you think about Silicon Valley and impact, or if you look at large successful companies, nobody knows Microsoft's first investor or second investor, but everybody knows the founders of large successful companies. And that was the driving factor, that can I create an impact? And also a question, I was questioning myself that I'm giving people all these advice. Can I take all of my ideas and apply to one particular venture and see if those ideas have any merit? So this is a journey of self-discovery, experimentation, and figuring out whether you can go out there and struggle and make something out of it.
Hey, Bipul, can you speak to some of the challenges on the product side of things? Like, how did you scale the product along with sales, like you spoke about?
So the way I think about risk in a startup, there are external risks which you cannot control. And then there are internal risks that you can. So whether the product will have demand in the marketplace, whether the customers will buy or not, is our external risk. These are unknown unknowns. You cannot plan for it. But product risks are more known unknown risk, where you can throw in people and resources and control it. So my thought process was that don't overinvest in the product till you find the demand in the marketplace. And as soon as you see the demand in the marketplace, start scaling the product very, very quickly. And there is always a time lag. And what we experienced in Rubrik was the market demand was far outpacing the product stability and readiness. But those are all good problems to have because 90% of the startups don't have that problem. But it was a lot of scrambling once we got the go-to-market engine going. And there were nights and days and weekends where we were not sleeping because everybody knew that there is a customer who is waiting with money to buy your product.
Hi. So it sounded to me like what you said was, startups are risky by definition, so don't be conservative within startups. But on the other extreme, there are also a bunch of startups who kind of like overdid that, right? Taken too many risks, and they just end up burning their cash out. So how do you maintain that balance?
So as venture capitalist, I learned a very important lesson, and that lesson was startups are about taking a huge amount of risk to start the company and then work every day to mitigate all the risks. If you're not doing that, then the risk persists and you die. So while you're trying to reduce risk, you might have to take some more risk. But as long as you're taking calculated risk to reduce risk, that is the goal of a startup. So startups typically, when you start, there are two risks in a startup. One is execution risk. Can you build the product? Can you hire the team? Can you go out there and talk about your product? And then second is capital risk. Do you have enough of progress by the time you run out of money to raise the next round of capital? And you have to balance both the risk while you are driving the initial build of a startup. If you have imbalance in capital risk and execution risk, and then you get to a point where people say, I'm just 1 month away from proving that there is a business here, and that 1 month's never come because there is a fundamental imbalance. So you have to really think through capital risk as well as execution risk.
Thank you for taking time, and love the jacket, by the way. It's very colorful and very nice. Really, you make it look easy, the way you talked about a set of decisions necessarily that you were making as you were scaling the startup, like inflection point, pivots, and whatnot. What was hard and unanticipated for you in spite of your light speed journey and your prior experience?
See, the thing is that life in retrospect is always easy. Life in ex ante, where you're looking out there, is very difficult. So I'm telling you a story of what has happened. And it sounds very clean and connected. But one thing to remember is that startups are, again, the way to think about it is driving a motorcycle at 200 kilometers an hour in complete darkness. So you can only control things few feet ahead of you. So you have to be extremely paranoid while extremely aggressive. And you have to find your balance in between the two states. If you are too fast but not enough paranoid, then you'll get killed because a small pebble can kill you. And if you're not fast and too paranoid, then you're not making enough progress, and then capital risk will kill you. So you need to find that balance.
So I just had one question, and maybe I'm wrong out here, but I just wanted to understand one thing. You were selling before you had a product, right?
Yes.
How did sales take to that?
Say again?
How did your salespeople take to that?
If you have salespeople in a startup who can't sell a concept, then they are not the right salespeople for your startup.
Okay.
The startups are all about selling yourself and your own passion to your customer. It's not about product. Because if you look at the spectrum of customers, people who buy startup products are also a little bit crazy. And they are highly tolerant of all kinds of risks. In fact, they will surprise you how tolerant they are. They want to help you succeed because they see in you what they could not do. And that is kind of like a sports, when you watch a sports, why people love a sports? Because everyone thinks of themselves as that player and reflecting themselves into the player. And when player is out there fighting in the arena, they all want to associate themselves to the player. Similarly, the early adopters, call it tinkerers, they all are seeing their own reflection in the company, in the product, and they want to take that risk because although they couldn't take the risk to go start the company, they want to take the risk to adopt a product of a new company.
So do you look at these attributes in a salespeople before you hire them? Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.